Photoshop has a couple of features that are actually easier to use if you start them from Bridge. So instead of going through the file menu and finding things like the scripts, load files into stack, and then within there go to browse and then look for files on the computer, instead of this I normally use Bridge. So I'm going to go to File, Browse in Bridge, and let's say I have a couple of images that I would like to load into the same composition. So I'm just going to select, let's say, this, and this, and then I go to Tools, Photoshop, Load Files into Photoshop Layers. So that's the same command I just showed you from the File menu under Scripts and Load Files into Stack. But going through Bridge, it was much easier to select the things I needed. I could even use collections or filtering before I actually select the files that I want to bring in into one Photoshop document. And how cool is that? We have all of these images now in one Photoshop document. And even the layer names are based on the file names. So instead of just simply double-clicking on them, which would open these files into separate Photoshop documents, I managed to get them all in the same Photoshop file, and each of the files became layers. Similar to this, we have another command. If I switch back to Bridge by using Command or Alt-Tab, I will go to the Merge folder because I have a couple of files here. I'm going to select these 6 images, and you can see already here in the preview panel that it's actually a series of photographs I took in the same scene. So it's like a panorama that needs to be stitched together. So once I selected all of them, I can go to Tools, Photoshop, and choose Photo Merge. And by the way, you can see all of the commands will be here. So the Bridge Photoshop integrated features are all in this list. So let me select Photo Merge, and then I'm just going to click on yes. That way it's going to open up these 6 images in Photoshop, and I can decide what I want to do with them. I can blend them together, I can decide to use geometric distortion correction, or even fill in the transparent areas automatically. I'm just going to click on OK for now, and let's see what happens. So Photoshop is going to combine these images, load them all into the same Photoshop document, and also align them based on their content. Now, I'm using portrait format images whenever I take pictures, and I know it's going to be a horizontal panorama, because that way I can have a little bit more height. So instead of taking pictures the normal way, like a landscape format, this allows me to have much more height. That way I can see the mountains, and also I can see the lake. So you see already I have 6 layers, and after aligning these, Photoshop will also blend them together. So it's going to create a seamless composition by using masks. And I can actually show you that if I turn off the mask, we can see the edge there on the lake. So it's clearly visible. And you can also see how Photoshop had to distort these images to make them look good once they are joined up together. And I'm going to just turn the mask back on. You can see how beautiful it looks. There's no sign of where these images were stitched together. Similarly to this, we can also merge HDR images together. So I selected 3 different exposures of the same pineapple, and then I'm going to go to Tools, Photoshop, and choose Merge to HDR Pro. So that is another really cool feature. Now, in this case, we will have these 3 images loaded into this new document as layers, and then we will get the option to merge these together. So now I can change things like the edge glow, then we can also change strength, and a lot of other things like gamma, exposure, and as you can see, it will all affect how the final composite is going to look like. Now in this case, maybe we want to increase the shadows slightly, reduce the highlights, and so on and so forth. So once I'm happy with it, I can always click on OK, and then it's going to combine these images together, and I'm going to get the composite HDR image as a separate new document. This HDR merge and also the panoramic photo merge can both be found under File, Automate, and they're Merge to HDR Pro and Photo Merge. The reason why I wouldn't recommend to use it from here is because if you select it, then you would still have to choose Browse and look for the files on the computer. Another one of my favorites is also from the File menu under Automate. It's called Contact Sheet 2. Now, this is again something is much easier if you start from Bridge. So let's say I have a couple of images. I'm just going to select only the JPEGs, select all of them with Command or Control A, and then I can go to Tools, Photoshop, Contact Sheet 2. So it's the same feature, but now I just started from Bridge, and that's thanks to that I already have all the images selected. So this contact sheet can be set up in a way that I want. I can change the width, height, resolution, so on and so forth. I can decide how many columns and rows I want on each of these pages. And I can also have the file name underneath each of these little thumbnails. So if I go to OK, then these contact sheet pages will be generated in a separate document. And this is how the final version looks. Now, this feature can be very useful if you need to send a set of images from which a client can choose which one they prefer, or you just want to have a reference of a couple of images for yourself that you want to print out and take with yourself. Last but not least, there's also another feature called Image Processor. If I go back to Bridge and go to Tools, Photoshop, Image Processor, that's the one that I use if I know that I need to convert multiple files or I need to resize them. So it's like a batch command for converting to different file formats, selected images, or resize them, or do both of them at the same time. So here I can choose whether I want to save these into PSD, TIFF, or JPEGs, or I can save at once multiple file formats as well. And I can also set a couple of other options on them as well. Plus, I can also resize these images. And if that's not enough, you can even run actions on all of these images. So you can choose actions that you saved yourself, or you can use the default actions saved in Photoshop. So going through these features, you can see that Bridge actually allows you to do a lot of automated features that you can also find in Photoshop, but it's much more convenient to run them from Adobe Bridge.